Okay, so what you will do as part of your assignments is you will do a communication plan. There's a template in there which I'll go through in a moment, but it basically predetermines who will be told what, when and how. Okay, and it talks about how you'll manage change, how you'll, who the stakeholders are. A lot of the things that you'll go into that you'll copy and paste out of documents that you've already done. And like all the other project documents that you'll do, this will not be written in blood once and forgotten forever. It will be something that you'll need to maintain and update so that you make sure that it's a living document as part of your project. Obviously, depending on the duration of your project, if it's something that lasts 2 weeks, then not. But if it's something that lasts 2 years, then you will need to update it. So the purpose of the communication plan is that any team member should be able to go into that document, read it, and understand exactly what their obligations are and are not. So what they should and shouldn't be doing. There's 3 different sorts of communications. One is interactive, one's push, and one's pull. Interactive is when you are when you have multiple parties together and it's bidirectional communication. So if we're in this classroom, this would be considered to be interactive. It is the most time consuming because it takes your time as well as mine, and it means that if we wanted to repeat it, we would have to do it again. We can't replicate it or anything like that. But it is the most reliable because you do get face-to-face, you eyeball people, you get to talk to them, you want to know what's going on, you're going to get a feel for body language, all that sort of thing as well. And of course, things like meetings, telephone calls, video conferencing, some webinars, etc. If it's interactive, where they can tell you stuff and you can tell stuff back, that's what this medium is. So the next one is push. So has anyone heard this terminology before? No? Push is when you send information to the recipients, whether they want it right then or not. Okay, so it's whether it's timely. Now, email is a good example of pushing stuff out to people. How many times you get an email and you think, I just don't want that. You know, you don't need it then, you don't need the information at all, or whatever it might be. So push is when you're pushing information out to people, whether they want the information, whether they think they need it, whether they need it at that particular time. So you have to be careful because it can be quite confrontational. And a good example, as I said, is email and is correspondence as well. So if you write a letter to somebody, which no one does anymore, but if you write a letter, put it in snail mail, send it to somebody, that's push because you've actually sent it out and it's not interactive. You with me? And obviously you need to wait for a response. So if you send some information out to somebody, you've got to sit there and wait for them to tell you whether they're going to give you a response, whether they agree, whether they don't agree, or whatever. And the opposite to push is pull. So this is where you put information somewhere and you allow the person to pull it down when they want it. Yeah, web-based technology is the most frequently used for pull technology. So it's when you make information available for them to access it when they are ready for it. But of course, there's no guarantee that they're going to access it. So if it's important and it's critical for you, you need some means of monitoring to make sure that that you do actually check that they've gone through and read it or whatever. So obviously, as we were saying, when you're using pull methodology, you usually need some web-based technology or something like that. Advertising might be a means. So for example, you say, I'm going to advertise every Tuesday and notify you all the date closures of these roads as part of the project. So you're putting it there and you're waiting for them to go and find it. You with me? Yeah, FAQs are a good example of that as well, because you don't actually tell everyone about it until they need to know what that question is that they want answered. So when we're in class, it's an interactive medium, yes? When I record it and put it up on the website, what is it? A pull. So if I email you and I tell you that this is available and I put the link in the email, what is it? That's a push. So you need to consider this depending on the stakeholders as to what they want and when they want it. So quite often, if you're managing a large project, it's worthwhile finding out what those stakeholders, what generation they are, how they work, you know, all that sort of thing, because it makes a big impact as to what type of communications you can provide, because obviously the younger generations have got a far more tolerance to some of these things than the older. So usually having a combination of the 3 is the best way to go. If you've got critical communications as part of your project, it is, a very good idea to actually have a combination of the 3. Now within the Hale Street project, they said that they actually went from the southern side of the river and walked back from all the streets, and they actually letter dropped and they went knocking on doors to find out. And what they did then is they created themselves a large email database just of the people who would be impacted by the project that they were running. So that way they were able to contact them and send out the communications, but they found out that those people wanted those communications before they started doing it. You have to be careful of spam. If you're going to use people's email addresses, you need to make sure that they are aware of what you're doing, where you got it from, and they have the option to opt out, so that you don't just send them stuff when they don't want it. So you do need to make sure that you read the spam code. So noise becomes quite an important part of it as well, because the noise is the thing that's going to interfere with the ability of the person that's receiving the communications to understand it and absorb it. So for example, the examples that I've got up there, if you're sending out a message but your competition's setting out a different message to try and contradict what you're saying, like the Clive Peters a while ago, we're the real Clive, but there's the Clive Peters advertising going on at the same time. So, which is obviously just advertising, it's not part of a project so much, but if you, for example, if you know that you've got a lot of people in an area that are going to be impacted that have English as a second language, you would need to make sure that you communicated in ways that had the right audience. You might need to advertise or promote it in multiple languages. You might need interpreters. You make sure that you communicate correctly with those people and tell them what's going on. And obviously technology is a big one as well, because there's no point having an email database that you set up which is perfect to send to everyone, but some people only check their email once every 6 months, and you've sent a critical message and then they didn't get it. So you need to make sure that the noise or the potential for interference for the types of communications you are doing has been accommodated. So in summary, we know you need to manage and control the interaction between the project and all the stakeholders. That's clear. It needs to be bidirectional. You need to control who talks to whom. You need to have a good combination of the interactive push and pull methodologies, and you need to plan for noise and mitigate any noise to try and make sure that you get the message across loud and clear. No. The noise isn't the actual item, it's the potential for interference with that item. So say, for example, you were printing that newsletter and you were putting it on the community notice board down at the West End. The chances are that somebody's going to stick something over the top of it or rip it off so they can use your drawing pin that you used. So the noise is that somebody's not going to read the newsletter because something's happened to it. So you would then laminate it and superglue it or whatever you're going to do to make sure that it was in the right place and read by the right people at the right time, and that it could be understood by them. That's right, or not understood. So any reason why the communication is not received or understood in the manner that you intended it. That's right. Or if I was recording this and I was going to put it online because I was providing this as a remote course, they might only have dial-up internet, which would make it pointless because they wouldn't be able to get access. Would have to print things out and then send it to them. So it depends on whatever the noise was, which is the interference of the delivery.